So now you've submitted your proposal and it's been a few weeks, you haven't heard anything back, and then all of a sudden you get an email or a letter and it says that congratulations, you've been shortlisted and now it's time to present. Okay, so what exactly does all of this mean? Usually during an RFP process, let's say 20 firms submitted proposals. The selection committee will then try to limit it down a little bit because, at this point they want to know a little bit more about the team who's going to be completing their project. So what they might do is take the 20 and then select a short list of about, 3 to 5 firms to come in and do presentations. Now this can vary depending on the agency. So some will shortlist at 3, some will shortlist at 10. It depends. So let's say that you're one of the people that was, or your firm is one of the firms that was selected to do a shortlist presentation. Congratulations. So what's the next step and how do you get started and what do you do? So in this section, what we're going to talk about is key information, planning, format and deliverables, and traits of great presentations. And hopefully after we go through all of this important information, then you'll have a much better idea of what you need to do for your presentation. So there's some key information that you'll probably get from the agency or the procurement specialist when it's time for you to start planning your presentation. They might tell you it'll be 20 minutes, or you'll have 20 minutes to present, you'll have 10 minutes for Q&A. They'll give you some basic specifications, but usually there's always some additional information and some additional items that you need to know in order to plan a really good presentation. So one of the first things I like to ask is, what kind of room are we going to be in? Because that will really shape a lot of things, like how many people you might want to bring in to present. What type of presentation do you want to use? Boards? Do you want to, however you want it, whatever tools you might need to present. So if you can get a very clear idea on what kind of room you'll be presenting in, that's really going to help you plan a presentation. How many people are we presenting to? So that will also determine what kind of things or what kinds of things you'll need to bring in to do your presentation. If you're presenting to 3 people versus if you're presenting to 20 people, that's definitely going to change how you want to structure your presentation. Will there be a screen in the room? So I've done presentations in rooms where we planned a PowerPoint presentation and we had to bring in our own screen, or we had to use the blank wall behind us. So knowing what kinds of tools you're going to have at your disposal is really important. Is there going to be a laptop available? Is it a PC or a Mac? That's a big issue. If you are a PC user or you're a Mac user and you have to switch and use something else, that really does change your comfort level, and especially if you're using PowerPoint. That definitely changes your comfort level. And also, sometimes, like for higher education, they'll provide you with a computer you have to use. So if you're used to using one or the other, that can definitely be kind of painful. So you also want to plan, do you need to bring a USB drive? I would never, always make sure that you have your presentation on you. You want to make sure that you don't have to go online to get your presentation. It never fails. Even if you're having to demo a new website or anything like that, you want to make sure that you have whatever you need on a USB drive or on your computer. You want to make sure that you have it with you. It never fails. When you have to go out and try to connect to something, the Wi-Fi isn't working, all kinds of technical issues. So always make sure that you're very comfortable with what kind of technology tool you're going to be using, and you have that on you. And a really great idea, if at all possible, is to ask if you can see the room ahead of time. What a lifesaver. I've presented in L-shaped rooms before, and that is a really challenging type of presentation situation. So going in, taking pictures of the room, getting your team, especially if you're presenting with a couple other people, getting them comfortable with the room is going to be really important for you to be successful during the presentation phase of the whole pursuit. Now that you have some basic information, you're ready to start planning your presentation. In the previous lesson, we talked about the 3 key points, differentiators, and win themes. You want to bring those back to your presentation. They are really going to help you during this part of the process. So make sure that you, again, have those 3 differentiators, your win theme. You focus your presentation on those things. You also want to clarify who's going to present. Depending on the length of the presentation, if it's 20 minutes, then you really only need 2 people, 2 to 3 people, the project manager, maybe the principal of the firm. You want to keep it pretty simple. The more people you have in a room, the more complicated things can get. Now, if you want to, you can always bring people to the room, but they may not have speaking roles. But again, it's always better if it really is going to be a team of 3 people that are going to be working on this project together, then bring all 3 people and give each person a speaking part. The tighter the presentation, you really want to limit the amount of speakers, because otherwise the coordination of getting everybody on and off the stage or on and off in front of the selection committee, just some of that logistics can really eat up time. So be careful about that. Rehearsal times. I don't know what it is, but people seem to really hate rehearsing. And rehearsing is one of the most important things you can do to make sure that you have a great presentation. When I'm rehearsing teams, I will not give up until we have one really bad presentation. Because my thinking is that if we can get that bad presentation out of the way while we're rehearsing, then it won't happen when we go in front of the client. So I always like to keep rehearsing until we get that one just awful presentation or one awful rehearsal, and you're just like, oh God, I just pray that doesn't happen in front of our selection committee. So make sure that you plan rehearsal times throughout. So you might want to, if you can, have a rehearsal time earlier in the process, go away, have people work on their pieces, and come back. Last minute proposal prep and last minute rehearsals, 2 hours before you go on. Usually you can do that with a team that's been working with each other for a really long time, but it never really works out that great. Deliverables. Make sure that you start planning on what kind of deliverables you might want to hand out to the client. I usually like to do placemats, and I'll show you an example of that a little bit later. Presentation style. Not every presentation has to be a PowerPoint. You can use boards. You can use PowerPoint. Sometimes just making sure that you connect with the selection committee is the best thing that you can do. The proposal, they already know you're qualified. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there for the presentation. So at this point, you really want to make sure that you're connecting with the audience. That's going to be the most important thing that you can do during this phase. All right, so we've kind of talked about planning. Now let's talk about the things that you can do to make your presentation stand apart from the competition, and what are traits of really great presentations. Again, they're focused. They're focused on 3 key things. Your selection committee is going to have 3 to 5 presentations that they have to remember, and in some cases it could be even 10. So make sure that you focus on 3 areas and you really hit on those things throughout your presentation. Customize for the project. Do not go and present a canned presentation that's not project specific. That's going to really annoy the selection committee, because it's, if it's not customized, they're like, why are we here? So make sure that you really make the presentation customized for the specific project, and you want to make sure it's customized for that specific client. A general presentation is not going to be a great way for you to win work, especially if you use the same presentation for a previous client and let's say you forgot to take the logo out. So make sure of the PowerPoint slides. Make sure that you customize the presentation for the specific project and the specific client. Don't focus on the technology. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but again, if you're not comfortable using PowerPoint, don't use PowerPoint during your presentation. If you are comfortable using boards, use a board. You don't have to use a technology tool. They might specify that they have a screen and a computer available for you to use if you want to use PowerPoint, but you don't have to. So focus on connecting with the client. That's the most important thing you can do. You don't want to be reading from your presentation. You want to be making eye contact. You really want to make sure that the selection committee is getting to know you and your team and starting to feel confident. Just like at a regular job interview, if you were to sit in front of your possible employer and just read from your resume and then look up occasionally, see if they're listening, and then look back at your resume, that's not going to be very much fun for either one of you. And the same thing in a presentation. And I know public speaking can be pretty darn scary for a lot of people, but that's what the rehearsals are for. And if you need to, bring in other people that aren't familiar with your company. Bring in family, friends to watch you present. so that you can get comfortable with presenting in front of people if that is an issue for you or your team. And last but not least, communicate passion. It's really important that you demonstrate during this phase that you really, really want this project. Of course you're like, well, of course I want the project. I did this whole RFP response and now I'm presenting. Of course they know I want the project. Yeah, but make sure you take the time to ask for the project in the presentation. Be like, hey, we're really excited about this. We really would like to work with you. Please select us to, take care of this project for you. Make sure that you ask for the sale and make sure that they know that you really want this project and it means a lot to you. And one last thing I wanted to show you is a possible deliverable. I like to create placemats for a presentation. So what I have is an example for you here. It's an 11 by 17 printed out document, folded in half. So it's like a booklet and it's printed on both sides. I'm just showing you the inside when you open it up. And it's just a summary of our, in this case, it's a summary of the team. So I have an organizational chart. I have the team bios, just very short ones. And I have some of the project experience that we cited as evidence as to why we can complete the project at hand, and then past clients that we worked with. And on the front, I just put like a nice cover image. And on the back, this team actually used PowerPoint slides for their presentation, and so we just included a copy on one page. We did the very small tile versions of the PowerPoint slides on the back. So this is just a great example of something that you can submit to the selection committee, and it just summarizes your qualifications, and it's not too much text to read. Because remember, they already read, a 200-page response from you. Hopefully it wasn't that. Hopefully it was only like 50, and they had, a couple hundred pages to read from all the other teams that submitted proposals. So this is just a really nice tool to summarize everything that your firm can offer in a very condensed format. So now that we've talked about shortlist presentations, let's talk about what happens whether you win or you lose the pursuit, and that's debrief. Win or lose, you got to debrief. We'll talk about that in the next lesson.